I was surprised to grow up and learn that people didn't like Wil Wheaton as Wesley Crusher. That was surprising to me. I thought it was awesome that they had like a kid on the bridge because he was like a smart, nerdy kid, and so he was able to
dislike Wheaton at the time because I was a kid. He was like, he's probably my age.
Exactly.
He's probably my age. And it seemed cool, but I think the view of people who are older at the time were that he was kind of lame and wishy-washy as a character.
Oh, come on.
I don't know.
He was young. What do you expect?
Cool young people?
Yeah. What is this, Nickelodeon?
Is that what you envision cool young people to be?
I'm apparently too young to get this reference.
You can't do that on television.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Yes.
What? Really?
This is another cheeky podcast from Stack Exchange headquarters, number 39.
Number 39.
On today's podcast, everybody's gonna eat a spoon of cinnamon.
I'm not going to do that.
And 10 saltines.
We already tried those two. Do you not remember that with Seth?
Did we try to eat 10 saltines on the podcast?
We definitely tried to do the spoonful of cinnamon.
Oh yeah, somebody did that. I remember that.
That's right.
Oh yeah, Sam. And as I recall, he was not successful.
Sam will do anything if you
impossible.
offer him enough money.
It's one of those things like
and by enough I mean like $5.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like
$5.
If you try to eat 10 saltines, you can eat maybe 2 saltines in a minute. Like you'd think, okay, I can't do 10, but maybe I can do 5. Nope.
Huh. Fascinating.
This week on Mythbusters
That's good
podcast
saltines.
number 39.
Can we talk about the gallon challenge too? That one's always fun.
Oh, that is a good one.
What do you do with that one?
You just drink a gallon of milk in an hour.
Oh,
And
an hour.
you can't throw it up. That's the other part.
Well, yeah, that's cheating.
You can really append that to all tasks, and you can't throw it up.
It's another one of these things that sounds easy, turns out to be almost impossible.
Today's guest is Jeremy Tunnell.
Hi, great to be here.
No, that will not do.
By the way,
That's what they do on the radio. I listen to the radio all the time.
Oh dear. Okay.
Start over.
Today's guest will be Jeremy Tunnell.
Haven't you ever been on the radio before? You have to say something.
Oh, first time listener.
Long time
wait.
listener, first time caller. And Jeremy Tunnell is a new product manager or PM on the Stack Exchange team, live from Nashville. Except he's in New York now.
You really had to think about where we were.
Well, every time I say Nashville, I think, wait, is that Memphis? Is it Memphis?
No, Nashville is
Nashville's not
in
Memphis.
fact a real place. Different than Memphis.
Exactly. But they occupy the same slot in my head. So I just a word blurts out, and then I have to stop and think.
That
back
slot
to
is
first
places
principles.
between New York and California.
Exactly. And well, they are in the same state, I believe, at least. Also, as usual, David Fullerton and Jay Hanlon.
Hello.
Hi.
And producer Alex.
Hello.
And on today's cheeky podcast, cinnamon.
Actually, Matt Gibson is now claiming that he could drink the gallon of milk.
He could. He is.
I
Sort
would
of
like to see that.
Yeah.
He does drink a lot of milk, but
He does look.
Well,
my
like
friend
he could.
was very confident that he could do it.
he did not.
He drank a pint of milk every night for dinner and was like, I could do a gallon, and it didn't end well.
That's unfortunate for him.
So anyway, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Jeremy's the new guy on the block. He started 2 weeks ago,
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, right after Thanksgiving. He's our new resident UX expert, kind of what we set out to
UX.
find and what we hired. So UX, yeah,
What exactly is UX?
user experience.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was like the University of Kentucky. No, that doesn't work. Okay.
Wow.
Go on. I hear David and Jay have planned an actual episode here. I have no idea what's going to happen. I was just lining up saltines, and
I was hoping skeptics would have a question about a gallon of milk. I don't think it's there.
Go for it. Go for it. You can. That's really more a YouTube kind of question.
Oh, I'm sure I can find the answer in YouTube's comments somewhere. If I
You
just
could
read
just
all the
watch
comments,
enough
it'll be
episodes.
covered.
It's more like here's my proof using a YouTube video that this is or not.
The proof video would be very boring. It's all the
Yes,
failures
yes.
that would be.
Hey, okay, since you guys don't have any idea for this podcast, you know what we should start doing? Starting next time, we should have listeners call in with their questions.
Like we used to a long
That's-
time ago.
Yeah.
Long before you were here, Jay. Don't worry.
I just finished listening to all the podcasts. So but there was the
It was
we
good.
did it
What
via
would
chat,
happen-
right? We did it through chat.
They
No,
could
there
either
was
email us
that.
an MP3
Yeah.
or they could call Blog Talk Radio, which probably doesn't even exist
Oh, the
anymore.
It
MP3s
does not.
must have been on the Stack Overflow
Yes.
podcast.
It was a long time ago. They could
Mhm.
call in MP3s, and we had like a whole batch of
We had a
them.
whole system, and I would listen to all of them, and they all sucked. And then I would pick 2 or 3 that were at least answerable in some way, shape, or form, and edit them, and then play them.
There's something quaint about them sending MP3s. Like, it feels like they recorded a cassette and mailed it to us, and then we listened to the cassette.
It was kind of like
don't do that, by the way, listeners. Don't mail a cassette. We won't listen.
Well,
no mixtape. Send me a mixtape.
You know what? While you guys decide what we're going to talk about on this podcast, I'm going to go look and see if
we started to, but then you thought UX was the University of Texas or something. So then we got sidetracked and
not New York or California. That's off topic.
Exactly.
Everybody always thinks I'm from Texas. Apparently, that's the first southern state people think of.
That is the first southern state you come to.
You guys can't see Jeremy right now, but he's wearing a 10-gallon hat, boots, spurs, and he's on a horse. We don't know why he's on a horse.
Yeah,
but...
I'm impressed he
So the
fit it in the
confusion
office.
is
it's for water polo later. Right?
And the weird thing is I don't get weird looks in New York.
That's true. That would definitely be true. You can wear anything on the subway in New York, and
Well, to be fair, there's a cowboy with no clothes on who hangs out in Times Square here.
That's true.
he's quite popular apparently.
I could play an old podcast question.
This is
Okay, we're not doing that.
okay.
We'll answer questions from the past.
The last one received was July 2010.
Joel, if people go to s.tk, I'm trying to think what I'll make this URL. Let's make it s.tk/. Okay, all right. What should the slug be?
I'm sorry, is there a big thing going across the bottom of the podcast now saying previously recorded? Please don't ask your questions now because it's a giant waste of time.
They have a whole week. How about podcast questions?
Fine. s.tk/podcast questions.
Yeah.
It will take them to our SoundCloud Dropbox where they can upload their question, the audio file of their question, and we will then get it and we can play it on the show. And
That's right.
respond
Or
to it.
just leave your comments below this video in YouTube.
what?
Or mail a cassette tape
Like it's a
to
tape.
Santa Claus, North Pole.
So we wanted to talk about UX, right? That's why we have Jeremy on here. That's why we hired him. So what Jeremy's been doing the first few weeks is going through the site, and what we wanted him to do first, before he kind of got too much into the, I don't know what to call it, our sort of way of seeing things, kind of capture the new user perspective. So Jeremy's not totally new to the sites. He spent some time on UX and a couple other sites, but he's not, sort of one of our long time, years and years long users. So we wanted to get that perspective.
Right.
So that's what he's been doing for the first few weeks, and that we thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit about that and kind of get that perspective.
Go.
Go. Dance.
Talk about UX. Go. So so over the past few weeks, I've been kind of registering a lot of new users, and I've been trying to put on my new user hat and not think like an engineer, because we have an awful lot of engineers here, and I think being an engineer myself, I think we all tend to think alike. And one of those things that we tend to do is we tend to think that the people will just push through. That when you run into something. We're used to working around obstacles, and we think everybody else will too. And one thing that I've learned while working on UX is that everything matters. So even the smallest thing, when you start A/B testing, one of the most amazing things that you see is you can literally move a word from one side of the page to the other, and it can change the conversion rate on that page in a huge way. And so I've just been going through mapping out our whole sign-up process and trying to figure out how we can do it better, what we can take away and still accomplish the same thing. And I think we're doing a great job, but I think that we've got some places where, I think we just have some leaks in places. And so for instance, one of the first things that I found is when we have a lazy registration process.
Mm-hmm.
So you can come to the site. You can visit a question page, and we allow you to answer a question without having to create a full account, without having to give us a password.
Right.
So basically, you give us your name, your email, you write the answer to the question, and bam, you're already engaged with the site.
And then but you think you've registered.
You think you've registered, and when we actually call you an unregistered user.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more clear.
But you filled out a form, and the form had your email address, and so it didn't have a password thing, right? So you
but you get You're used to getting 2 to 3 fields, and then you've joined something, right? And we give you 3 fields, so it really feels like the higher end of joining things.
And the third one is your URL or something.
It is your homepage.
Third one is homepage, which is actually the first thing I wrote down that we should remove.
Yeah. How many people provide a homepage, actually?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
But if we don't get an address from them, where do we mail their mixtapes? This is going to break the whole...
Homepage, you can't...
What are we going to do with all those cassettes?
I haven't really thought ahead that far, to be honest with you.
We'll get to that. We'll cover these things.
What is a homepage exactly, Jay?
I don't know.
So
yeah.
I was trying to figure out why we have a homepage URL there.
We have that because I'll tell you, because I'm the oldest person here. Because in the old days, we thought we would give you the opportunity. Geez, your name used to link to that, I think, actually.
This was my theory.
possible?
So my theory was there exist forums, right? Actual forums where you can go in and you post a comment. And when you post a comment, you put your name, your email,
and if you
and
want,
your website. If you want,
gives you an opportunity to advertise.
And
your
that
website.
way, when you click your name, it goes to your website, and that's nice.
That is awesome.
As far as I know, that has never happened on Stack Overflow or Stack Exchange because every time you click your username, you go to our user page. Now we've got the website there, and you can click through, but there's no reason why, if you're just trying to post an answer, you should want to give us your website. I
think
guess
we have a lot of websites actually on there. If you go into the users page and look at...
well, sure, because it's the one field we ask you for. The question is, do we care?
Well, you guys chat amongst yourself. I'm going to look at the last 5 users and see how many of them put in a...
This is a good scientific approach.
Yeah.
So...
Okay, no.
So anyway, I think this is interesting. Well, there's a couple interesting things here. One of them is just this idea of just removing things that aren't necessary.
Nobody's filling that in at all.
Okay, great. Which means we can get rid of it.
But they're not filling in anything. Their usernames are just user19026143.
Yeah, that happens as well. If you don't give us a username.
Well, we don't even ask you for a username. We ask you for your real name.
No.
If you don't even provide that.
I don't think we specify there.
Which totally proves my point. These people
name.
don't want to type in this stuff. They want to answer the question. So let them answer the question with as little information as possible, and then we can work with them from there.
Yeah, nobody's putting in they do eventually put in a website once they become more established users, and in fact, many of them do. But there's not a single one on the last page of users that filled that in.
I think something you hit earlier, too, when you're talking about just the...
If I find one, I'm going to send them $10 with PayPal, I swear. If I find one person that typed in that website field.
there's going to be a number very shortly. But I think one thing you hit on, Jeremy, about sort of the difficulty in doing certain things, there's probably 2 different interesting things that contributed to some of those setups. One is simply that over time, the site evolves in large part around what power users need, right? And so we have Meta and we get great feedback, but the people on Meta to start with, and certainly the ones asking for features, are more frequently ones who are highly, highly familiar with how to use the basics of the site. They've worked it out, and they're trying to learn to do things that are just fundamentally different needs for power users versus normal users. The other, though, I think, is starting with a programmer base is just different, which is, their programmers, I think, are so good at solving problems and figuring out how to work around things. You have this sort of like that works fine. You need a Dvorak keyboard.
I
put it
one.
sideways. $10. Congratulations.
No, he wasn't
User
on the first page.
4592.
No, he was not on the first page, so he doesn't get it.
You did not read the fine print.
It's like 1% of people fill that in. That's essentially what I'm going with here.
That was science you just heard.
My typical engineer versus real person example is if you had a forum and you were trying to accept a phone number.
Uh-huh.
And so you have all these people putting in all kinds of different phone numbers with parentheses and dashes and spaces and all of this stuff.
Yep.
Well, your typical programmer would be like, well, we'll just validate this and make sure that they've typed it in exactly the way we tell them.
That's
and then
right,
let's put some text above the field to explain exactly the ways that we will accept a phone number on this website.
Uh-huh.
And, if you're a regular user, like, we know what phone numbers are going to look like. Let the user type in the phone number however they want. And as long as we've got enough numbers, we can figure out, whether it's valid or not. So, I think a lot of the times there's a tendency to put instructions in places and kind of add validation when the correct way is just kind of get out of the user's way or help them do what they wanted to do, without having to have that interaction.
And to be fair, this goes to something that you guys talked about a lot. Joel, you and I think
guys?
On the earlier podcast, you and Jeff and other people talked a lot about, I think, what Jeremy's getting at, which is the goal, even from the beginning, I think, when we're focused on it, is don't make people think or learn new things. And learn new things can often be, we don't we don't often think about it in these terms, but it can be as simple as, don't make me think about how you want me to enter my phone number.
Right.
Let me type in a thing, and if there's 7 consecutive digits and no others in there that are numbers, I know what you meant.
Well, you're driving the programmers listening to this podcast crazy because they're sitting there saying, some people leave out the area code, some people put in the area code, some people put in a 1 because that's the number you have to dial to get it. Some people forget the country code, some people put in a 1 as the country code, some people
very predictable.
Insist on putting a plus. It's not super predictable. I think if you made a phone number field and it just said phone number, you'd get a bunch of garbage. You wouldn't be able to call half of those people.
It's not predictable, but it's learnable. So what you can quickly figure out is what are the combinations in there that happen often enough that it's worth essentially allowing and understanding them. And what are the ones where we can then safely determine that you probably don't have a phone and shouldn't be typing in this field or any other. And then we can just say, we're not going to worry about those
Well,
cases.
we don't get people's phone numbers, so this is irrelevant to us. However.
Wait, what?
It seems possible it was an example. I'm not certain. I'm not a UX expert.
Only work-related examples. Okay, I'm taking notes over here too.
Okay. My point was, remind me again what the phone number has to do with what we actually do.
Oh, it's the engineer versus user way of looking at things. And the engineer way of solving problems.
Kind of strict and want everything formatted their way.
We love order.
We do.
Well, in order to put this in the database, I need it to look like this. Therefore, I'll ask the user to make it look like that.
I got into a big debate with my bosses at my previous job because...
Wait, what?
This is not,
when
this
was
job
this?
was not the Israeli army.
This is a Juno.
We're talking about 40 years ago.
And Juno had a sign up. To sign up for Juno, you had to, I think it was 29 pages. There was a 29-page wizard you had to go through, and it was asking you things like what diseases did you have and stuff like that, because the whole idea of Juno was it was a free email service, and so you had to give us all kinds of personal information so we knew what ads to show you. And they just asked the ad salespeople, like, what kind of targeting do you want? And they're like, I don't know. I'm a pharma rep. I sell ads to the pharmaceutical companies, and they're going to want to know what kind of drugs you might be willing to buy. And so we had one where you could list, osteoporosis and diabetes and stuff like that, and check off all the things you had. So
we have some real estate now where that homepage used to be. We should consider
that's an interesting one. Apparently, we could make a lot more money if we collected your diseases.
Correct. And
though, of course, Juno went out of business. Do they still exist?
Yes, they still exist.
Okay. They probably still have that question.
No. That particular question about diseases, I got removed before it went live. But they also had, when's your birthday? Because they figured they could show you something on your birthday to try to convince you to buy a birthday thing or whatever. And they know how old you were, and they get all kinds of useful information.
That's not how birthdays work. Do
You
they
have a
understand
fundamental
that?
misunderstanding of birthdays.
What do you mean?
They're thinking Hobbit birthdays, on which you buy stuff for all your friends.
No.
Human birthdays, your friends buy you stuff.
In retrospect, hobbits were too small a demographic for Juno's goals.
Well, okay. So wait. No, they're smart. They got your birthday because they need to know how old you were so that they could target you demographically. But then they ask you for all your kids' birthdays, right? So they're like, tell us how many children you have and what all their birthdays are. So there were about 19
people
fields.
Signed up for this?
Oh, yeah.
Not only, so I remember signing up for Juno.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I had to fill out this Byzantine form Joel's describing. I don't remember that. What I remember thinking is, I can't believe they give you free email. This is, at the time, amazing. It seemed mind-blowing.
Free, no money.
All I had
will
to
fill
do
out anything.
was describe how I felt for the last 16 years to them, and they would give me free email.
It was your third grade geography teacher, those kind of things. Yeah. So there were a lot of fields that had dates in them, your birthday, your anniversary, there were just a lot of date fields. And the design that I was given was the world's worst possible date field, where you've got a drop down with a month, a drop down with the day of the month, and then a drop down with 120 different years in it. And you pull a little drop down on Windows. You guys remember Windows drop downs? I don't know. I guess some of you still use Windows. And what you do is you see a little list box appears that has 4 things. It's got January, February, March, April. And then there's a tiny little scroll box next to it. And you got to get your mouse right in there and go click, 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 down, 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 down. And then so to choose August, for example, was 18 clicks. That you had to get exactly right.
18 seems unlikely, but we'll go with it.
No, because you're looking at January, February, March.
Oh, okay.
You got to scroll down to reveal April. May. First, you got to reveal the thing.
It's not essential to your point. There's a lot of clicks. Clearly, we can agree it was more than
work-related example.
It was more than a few clicks.
It was a lot of clicks. But that's just for August, and then you got the day of the month, and then you're like, oh my god,
that's 400 clicks.
Right. So we had this ability to actually allow people just to type in a text box, and then we would parse whatever date format it was. right? It could be month/date/year. It could be year/month/date. It could be the month spelled out. It could be the first 3 letters of the month. It could be the month in Roman numerals. I couldn't care less. I wrote some nice code that parsed that all using a com function. So also not relevant, but it was built into com. It was just it was easy. And for whatever reason, a group of people at Juno decided that this was maddening and that this would be harder to use than the other way. And this was my big debate. They said, you have to tell people what format to type in, and you have to give them little drop downs. It's much easier because they have separate drop downs. And I said, it's easier just to give them a text box so they can type in any format they want. And we'll just figure it out. When they tab away, we'll parse it.
Who won?
So this was the debate. Probably they won. Yeah.
I mean, that was back before user experience was really a term, right?
Yeah, the term didn't exist, but I think there were some people that saw themselves as
not
usability
together.
experts.
So
yeah.
So I mean, this is the sort of thing, right? At the one level, everybody still has those arguments, right? But at another level, we know exactly how to answer those arguments, which is just test it and see what people do.
Yeah.
Presumably not possible in the days of Juno, but no.
No, they did usability testing, and we had to fly out to Colorado, where there was a usability test lab that we rented. I swear to God, it was a trip. We got in an airplane and flew to Colorado. At least it was a
okay, but at least you're doing usability testing. So
sample of people.
So wait, what did usability testing look like? You flew out people to test, or you just found Coloradans?
We went to this place in Fort Collins where they had a building, and when you went in there was a room that had one-way glass, and in the back all kinds of control panels and lights and cameras.
Is this like where you pull the lever and it drops a treat for them?
And on the other side,
where you deliver shocks to the participant,
who's sitting there trying to use. I think we may have usability tested this very thing. And the trouble is that the sign up form took 4.5 hours to complete. I mean, it was impossible for regular people. I mean, I could click through it very quickly because I learned all the keyboard shortcuts while I was testing it to get through it in like 60 seconds because I had to get to the next stage.
Turns out they were giving away usability testing and making their money by getting information from you from the forum. It's a great business model.
It could be. No. It was. I remember it was $100,000 we paid to this usability testing lab in Fort Collins. I wonder if they're still there. What were we talking about?
So
examples.
So we don't do that. We don't fly to a usability lab in Fort Collins.
No.
We just do stuff
put it on the web.
On the web,
but you can't see
what
when
happens.
people are. You don't.
You can't see their reactions, but
and you also don't know what mistakes
if you have enough
they're
volume,
making,
you can measure.
Whether they're getting through successfully.
Yeah, whether they're getting through successfully, or you could even measure, how long are they spending on this particular formula? How many people give up when they get to this form element?
There were a surprising number of Juno users who were born on January 1st, 1901. That turns out to have been
we have a great there's an awesome, if you look at the distribution in Stack Exchange, there's an awesome date at whatever we've decided is the oldest a human being could be and still be on the internet. There's like a date we've picked that's like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's this massive distribution of like 88-year-olds.
Yeah, it's very I still don't know what causes that, because it's not the Unix epoch, which is what usually that causes those things. Do we just have a max age you can be?
Yeah, I think we've set a rule that I think before which
anybody over that age is lying, and therefore
it looks like. But the distribution is like this bell curve, except back at like 89 years old, born on this day, is this massive chunk.
Yeah, it's very strange.
How people behave.
So usability testing.
Our birthday format is year/month/day. Like
speaking of which,
only a birthday format that nobody uses.
Well, what do you mean? SQL Server loves that format.
Yes.
SQL Server and most of our users probably.
That is the engineer's date format.
Exactly, because it alphabetizes nicely.
We also require it in UTC time zone.
You don't ask you for time.
And we ask the user to convert to UTC before they type it in. Because that's what we expect.
We actually make them go to Greenwich to log on.
We have heard from a lot of people that it is completely friggin' impossible to sign up for a damn service.
So, what we have is a site optimized for programmers, right? And to be fair, when it was built for programmers, and it's perfect for them. They love it, right? They eat this stuff up.
It was built assuming that you would have an OpenID account.
That was part of being a programmer, right? It was built assuming you're a programmer, and programmers understand why OpenID is strictly better than, having to make another password, and therefore all programmers are going to want an OpenID, so they're not going to mind signing up for one when they get here.
Right, so they have to go somewhere else, get an OpenID, arrange for an OpenID, and then come back to our site.
But your average programmer is okay with that because they understand the why. But your average normal person doesn't understand the why. That they just see you're making my life difficult for no apparent reason. And to be fair, we are making their life.
Yeah.
Well, probably. realistically, everybody's got a Google account, everyone's got a Facebook account. So you have an OpenID that you may not know about. But we're making you learn something. So that going back to the kind of don't make me think idea, we're making you think an awful lot about login, which is something that is very straightforward to most people. I type in my password and I'm done.
I think because we were ahead of our time with it, right? We were really doing that before there was a lot of that widespread on the internet. We had to talk about it, and the people who were interested in it wanted it, and who were trying to show why it was so good. We need to say this is this great thing, and it goes across these sites. And the current real world implementation doesn't really want people to know that. We basically just say sign in with Google. You have Google, you can work here.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is there was a time where we thought OpenID had lost, right? Where we still liked OpenID, but nobody else seemed to be adopting it. But that's in the last couple years, it's swung back the other way, where almost every new site you see now offers a Google and a Facebook and a Twitter login, right? They're doing that because they want to, capture your Facebook account so they can post on it without your permission. But they are offering that as an option because it's easier for a lot of people. It's interesting that they're not using OpenID, right? This standard that is OpenID, where you have a URL as your identifier, that turned out to be totally confusing to normal people. But they're using OAuth, and you log in through Facebook, and people are getting used to that. Right. It just turns out that we were early. People didn't understand it yet, and we have a particularly complex implementation where a lot of the news sites just paper over a lot of the confusing things. Right? It's just click the button.
Right. Yeah,
and come back.
Log on with Twitter,
right? And you're fine. And they don't ever expose the URL that or that your secretly is your authentication token.
Well, I mean, when we do that, we never have to explain to them what OpenID is. I mean, everybody just knows. Like, if you're going to sign in with Facebook, you click the button and it walks you through. And you don't see the words OpenID or any technical term in the whole process.
Yes, you don't. I think you don't even think about it. I think at the end of the day, what most people understand is that I can use the login and the password I use on Google here. And I think if you ask the average person, they'd say, oh, well, they must give them to them. I told them they could share it. Like, they don't even understand it's basically a token authentication. They don't care, right? They just feel like that logs them.
You're right. They do not understand that it's a token authentication.
Is that even right?
A what?
Is that even true?
It could be construed as true.
They don't even take tokens anymore on the subway.
So it's interesting. So this the open idea.
It's a Metro card.
The OpenID idea was right, and it is winning. Well, OpenID itself
not
didn't,
OpenID per se,
but OAuth, yeah. Now most places, I can't think of any sites that only take that.
Sometimes they do with Facebook because they want to spam.
Because they're tightly integrated with Facebook. But
they just want to
usually like the other site, the red site that shall not be named, initially only took Facebook and Twitter because they wanted to spam everyone you know. But
wait, what's the what site?
Quora started that way.
Oh, Quora.
Quora started as only Facebook and Twitter.
You know what I found out? There's a site called chacha.com. Have you guys heard of this?
Oh, man.
So I will break out the recording of you saying chacha.com from your previous chatcast.
Look at this. Younow.com only lets you log on with Facebook. This looks like some...
Is this a real website? Did you just Google sites that only let you log on with Facebook?
I just noticed the site the other day, and it's like you can have a really crappy experience without logging on, but to log in, there's only one choice. It's Facebook. And that's
so they have a reason to do that, right? They're giving something up, right? Ease of login in order to get something they want, which is your Facebook account, so they can spam everyone you know. We don't do that. We don't care. We don't have a reason to insist on getting your Facebook account. Therefore, I mean, that's why we offer the Stack Exchange OpenID, right? The email password login, so that we just want you to be able to participate in our site.
Right. We were, the truth is that for the first few years, we were actively promoting OpenID to try to get people to...
Well, we thought it was a good idea, and it was, if everyone had adopted it.
Yeah, and they did sort of adopt OAuth quite extensively, although it's sort of strange that the internet is turning into a bunch of weird silos. The internet is not nearly as open as it was. The idea of saying log on with... Like, when you go to YouNow and you really have to log on with Facebook... that's a very different experience than the OpenID people were saying, where you get to control your identity. You can make your own OpenID server if you want. Use any OpenID server you want. Anybody can be an OpenID provider. And essentially here, they're just kind of deciding for you that you have to log on to the site with Facebook, which is vastly worse for the internet.
It's true. So it was... Well, it was trying to solve the identity problem, and that is being solved by the OAuth stuff.
I mean, what happens when you get kicked off of Facebook because...
But the whole idea of having your own OpenID... routed through your website so you could control it later, right? That was something that only programmers ever figured out, and was totally lost, right? Now you're like even more tied to your Google account because you use it to log in everywhere, and therefore you can never get rid of it.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. What if Facebook decides that you're probably not a real person because they don't believe that Sirhan is a real name, and they kick you off?
Or one of your friends sent in an obituary of you as a joke, and then they declared you dead.
And now you don't have a Facebook account, but you also don't have you can't go onto YouNow anymore and vote for your favorite video celebrities. But it could get worse. You could be locked out of everything.
How could it get worse if you're Sirhan?
That's true. Is that the person who killed Robert Kennedy?
That was not a good example of someone whose situation could get much worse by losing access to younow.com.
I brought that up because Facebook has a tendency to shut people off for having names they think are fake. And one thing that makes them think a name is fake is same first and last name, which is actually relatively common in some parts of the world.
So let's talk about another example of something on the site that is a good idea for programmers, works well for them, but turns out confuses normal people an awful lot.
Okay.
Which is Gravatar.
Gravity.
So Gravatar is great if you have one because it just works, right? You sign up for Stack Overflow and your picture just automatically comes in, and you don't have to even think about it because you entered your email address. But it turns out that the experience of not having one, of trying to just upload a picture, is like 14 steps when you have to sign up for Gravatar. Including an email confirmation from Gravatar where they make sure that you are actually who you say you are.
They have to do that.
And a unique username.
You got to pick a Gravatar name. You got to get their email confirmed. You got to click the link. Then you got to upload your photo.
In addition to your email
you
address,
have to declare. You have to declare its rating: PG, R, X.
That's a nice.
It's
a decent feature, but
it's a great moment where like you've almost always posted a picture that is in some way representative of you, and then it's basically like, well, how sexy would you say this picture is? Like, too sexy? Too sexy for a kid, or too sexy for like a teenager? I always go, I don't know. I'd like to think, maybe in between.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like 1 out of 7 people have Gravatars.
But I think there's a bunch of
more science. You just heard it right here.
No,
1, 2, 3, 4.
It's a representative sample.
Yeah.
With a 0-degree confidence. I think a
little bit higher than
our implementation of Gravatar is particularly, because we talked about user tests before. We did do a very small sample of one of these online user testing services, and we learned there were some really interesting things. Small sample, but once it records people, they kind of comment as they go through, so you can both see what they did and hear what frustrated them. And one of the experience,
Wait, what is this thing that records people?
I told you we talked about this. We did a small sample of an online user testing service.
What's it called? What's the service called? We like to name names here. Our listeners of this podcast may want.
I think we use usertesting.com, I believe, which is very aptly, if not cleverly named.
Yeah, but slightly generic.
Yes, we have
almost putting me to sleep right now.
Give it a highly mixed review. They had it didn't work that well, is what I'd say.
Okay.
Their service was good. They were very responsive, but they couldn't really fix the problems. They just cared a lot, which is nice, and you're less angry about the whole thing. But anyway, we got some interesting feedback. But one of the things that we saw pretty consistently, and you can watch someone in real life, it's kind of fun is if you actually get them to go to their profile, which we don't push too aggressively right now, and they decide they want to add a picture, which they may or may not. We don't really encourage it too much. And they go, all right, I'm going to click on this picture because then I can probably put a new picture on, like I would on Facebook or on Twitter or any of the other online places people put their pictures. The reaction is almost universal of, where the F am I? Because you click on, it's not like we have this fundamentally wonderful like third-party system and it unifies. You click on like a picture where you thought your face was about to.
You click change picture.
Change picture.
Just a link
and all of a sudden you're on this new website that's like, welcome to Place with Pictures, and entering your email and perhaps we will steal your identity.
Yeah, your Gravatar is an image that follows you from site to site. It's an image that follows you.
The beginning of the process is tough, but I think the end of the process is probably the toughest part of it. And when I was going through this, I mean, I've been on the web forever and I've designed websites, and I actually did not have a Gravatar. So this was me actually being a new user. And so I clicked on change picture and I get sent to gravatar.com and I have to figure out what it is. And then I jump through the hoops and I verify my email address and I create a unique username and type in a password twice. And I finally get in there and I can upload my picture, and then I'm done. And I'm sitting there and it says, congratulations, you uploaded your picture. And now I'm thinking, well, how do I get back to Stack Exchange? How do I tell?
Oh, we don't want you back.
How do I tell Stack Overflow that I now have a picture and that they should go check Gravatar?
That's right. You have to wait. You have to wait a day for it to just sort of magically show up.
And I just that's one of those situations where the next step is just not there.
Well, we do open it in a new tab, so you could just close your tab and then.
That is a fair
You
point.
you may have forgotten that in the jumping around between email and everything else to confirm your identity, and you got to upload the picture of your driver's license. And
I tend to lose things among my 20 open tabs.
And then when you get back, it hasn't changed during this point. So you're still staring at. It takes 15 minutes. Or...
the first time, it's actually not as bad as we make it sound. The first time it's instantaneous because it's not cached yet. After that,
your changes take a long time.
Changes can take a long time.
It's just like you've been sent to like Donkey Island with Pinocchio for a while, and you found your way back, and you got through all the mazes, and you're like, nothing has changed. This is very disconcerting.
Yeah.
So I mean, so Gravatar is not something we're going to get rid of, though Jeremy would like to, because
Don't put words in my mouth, but if I were to say that out loud, I probably would say it just like that.
So, but the solution here, the solution here is.
Do our listeners know how much Jeremy looks like Wil Wheaton?
It came up on the blog post on the announcement.
I usually get John Cusack, so that's actually the first time I've ever heard that.
Okay,
right.
That's like a giant. You've been like demoted. Sick. I
No,
don't even
what
know.
are you talking about?
Really?
Wil Wheaton?
Cusack to Wheaton?
Wheaton is a geek hero.
Seriously.
Okay. I don't know.
So anyway, Gravatar. So we're probably not going to get rid of it, but the obvious thing we can do here is just offer an alternative. We would like there to be an API in Gravatar where we can just upload it straight to them through some API, and they don't have to leave our site to do this. Gravatar. We can put a nice shout out to Gravatar, but it seems like they don't offer this. But what we can do is just offer an alternative, right? Offer our own upload form, upload your picture, or use Gravatar over here if you want to.
Trello's implemented that, I think, pretty effectively, if I'm not mistaken.
That's possible. Do they use Gravatar?
I think they use Gravatar if you have it, but they have a simple upload your own if you don't.
They also did the nice thing where if you instead of just a random thing, it's nice for Trello because they need some sort of identification. But
like initials.
They do your initials if you don't have an image. But we have the pretty colored triangles and half circles, which are not bad because they're consistent across. They're consistent for one user and always unique. So it makes a nice, easy way to identify people in a particular thread.
People love the colored triangles too. I found that out. Hallway usability testing.
Really?
Yeah. The first thing.
Do you think anybody is like attached to their triangle combination? They're like, I like my triangle combination. I kind of want to keep that. I kind of want to use that on Twitter.
Are those randomly generated? Is it like a fractal or something?
Based on your email?
They're random.
It's like a hash.
A hash of your. If we have your email, it's a hash of your email. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a hash of your IP.
So that makes it the same.
But yeah, it's randomly generated. They've got some algorithm. They pick a color. They pick some patterns. It's some sort of. It's not a fractal per se, but.
I just wanted to say the word.
That's fair.
Makes me sound smart. I'm introducing myself to the world.
Hello, world.
I think the write-up for this episode is going to need to include the soon-to-be-created Photoshop mashup of Wil Wheaton and John Cusack.
What if
compared to the picture of
I look forward to that.
Can we go back and just record over the part where we introduce him as Jeremy and just call him Will the whole time?
Okay. We can't have two product managers named Will.
That's a fair point.
We can make the one could be Cusack and one could be Wheaton.
We could make them fight to the death. Like the Batman scene with the stick.
Why don't we just call him John?
Or Jill.
Why are we making up names? I'm confused.
It's unclear. It's unclear.
So that's that's Jeremy. He's new. Be nice to him if you see him on the sites, but not too nice because he's got to get the real experience.
Yeah, give him the real experience.
Close his questions and if they're terrible, and
tell him to Google it.
Share your grievances with me.
Yeah, we've got much more dedicated focus on user experience issues. Not that we didn't before, but real dedicated focus. I'm going to stick with that phrase. But so you can send Jeremy issues, or you can post them on Meta.
Yes, but with an emphasis on testing, right? So we're not terribly interested in people's opinions about what sucks.
Right.
Stories of what was painful,
except
for Joel's, because we have to listen to Joel's stories.
Right.
Sometimes they're even about the site.
But if we hear stuff that's interesting, then we'll do a test and see what their test results say. So that's UX. I had a couple other things that we can bring up.
Cool.
That may be moderately interesting. So sort of news from the dev team. We had some pain earlier this week. We went down twice.
Oh, we had an outage.
Twice, yeah.
Yeah. Things overheated in Oregon.
Two apparently unrelated reasons.
Not for very long, though, to be fair.
No.
Nothing like Tumblr last night.
One was 10 minutes and the other one was
Tumblr was
less
down
than
like
half an
all
hour.
of yesterday. I didn't know how to express myself if I couldn't retumble other things that my friends had already created. Sorry.
So Tumblr goes down and
High school
people
just screeches to a halt.
Yeah, people start, losing their minds. We go down and people just can't work. So not that big a deal.
We would, this has been a long-term plan of ours to have a 2-day outage in order to get a news story about how the programming world has come to a halt in the absence of Stack Overflow. We thought that would be valuable publicity for us.
Why don't we just shut off the site for a day?
Yeah, well, that would be the idea, yeah.
I think we need to cement our power more before we can show the world that we could take it away at any moment. And,
we might want to make an announcement at the United Nations before we do this. Attention, nations of the world. We are shutting off your programming knowledge.
I'm envisioning you as like an alien.
Floating head. I'm picturing a floating head, like Futurama style.
Exactly.
So this went a weird direction. Mostly I was just going to talk briefly about the outages. One of them wasn't that interesting. It looks like a hardware failure, and because it was a hardware failure, it didn't fail over automatically to the backup, but we just kicked it over to the backup and it fixed itself. But the other one was somewhat interesting, which is because our search, we're starting to outgrow our search solution. So we already outgrew one search solution, which was to do it directly in SQL. And then we switched to Lucene.net, and now we're getting too big for that. We're starting to run into it's got apparently a fairly major
bug. Well, Lucene.net has not been developed for a long time because it's in C#.
It was technically abandoned, and then people kind of picked it up again. But yeah, it's a port from Java. It's not really a good place to be.
Not a lot of excitement.
It's great if you just need to get something going fast.
What do people do in the .NET world?
They spin up not .NET server.
They just run another server.
They just run Java. You can Lucene is Java, so you can run it on Windows.
Yeah. The actual Java version.
Actual Lucene. But what you really want to run is generally not bare Lucene. You want to run one of these things that's built on top of it, like Solr or Elasticsearch. So,
by the way, I hate to interrupt, but they're pointing out in the chat room that our status blog, Stacks, is on Tumblr, stackstatus.net. If you're ever wondering if we're down, and Tumblr is not down on the same day, then go to stackstatus.net.
That's for the case where we managed to take everything down, and therefore our status, our normal server fault blog where we would post outages is down.
Sure.
It's better to just follow the Twitter account, actually. That gets updated immediately.
What's the Twitter account?
Stack status.
The @ sign, that's a shift 2.
But what if Twitter and
status.
Tumblr go down?
Yeah. You know that Twitter has their status thing on Tumblr, and Tumblr has their status thing on Twitter.
Did you just explain where to find the @ symbol for our audience? Is that what you were saying? Is that I heard shift 2 after you said @ Make sure you tell them if they need a keyboard first, and that they shouldn't be in a cave or.
I think you should explain what the @ symbol is.
First, wake
it's
up.
the A with
you
the circle
need to wake
around
up
it.
before you can do this.
Find the keyboard.
If you do not have fingers, it will be very hard.
Oh dear. What were we even talking about?
All right, I'm sorry I brought it up. This has gone a very weird direction.
Carry on.
So we're investigating some of these other options, which actually will hopefully make our search even better than it is right now. It's sort of something we've been meaning to do, but putting off because it wasn't urgent, and then suddenly it became urgent because
our search is awful. Nobody uses it.
Crashing.
They use Google. You can't find anything with our search.
Turns out quite a few people use our search. Most traffic comes from Google, but a large number of our users are using our search, and actually a lot of our features are built on top of search. So search is not just the search box; it's also related questions, or when you're typing in a new question, you do a title, you type the title in, and then we show you related.
Yeah, and the search
questions.
I would have probably 2 days ago just said our search sucks and nothing else. But the truth is, our search actually has a lot of really cool features for power users.
Oh yeah, that's all the axes where you can say like, show me closed questions, show me
closed questions is kind of it's not so simple to do in a traditional search. Like you can get closed, but you'll also get a lot of stuff as the word closed. We have some actually good features.
Also to our listeners, if you don't know how to get that, what you do is you click on the little in the search box. Actually, what do? You just enter a blank search. And you'll see a gigantic list of all the amazing things you can do in search. Like find questions that have been migrated.
Okay, so I just learned that. That might be a good place for a tooltip or a little grayed out.
Yeah, go into the search box and hit enter, and you'll see all the amazing tips. That's what we would call a non-discoverable feature.
So one of the side effects here is that our search will almost certainly get better. It will get faster. because we're finally doing this. And
you could just say our search that is literally broken and was crashing the site will get better.
it was working. It was failing. It was failing in a more fun way than like you hit search and you get no results back, or you get an error page back. It was failing in a way where you hit search and then it spins for a while, and it turns out you just crashed the server. So,
but it's going to get better than that.
It's
That's all I'm asking.
It only did that for a short period one morning, and we fixed that. But it's now a problem in our crosshairs that we're looking at. And the thing is that now we won't be on Bare Lucene, so we'll be on probably Elasticsearch, and we'll get a lot more options, things we can play with to make it better. Like, for example, Bare Lucene doesn't do stemming. Stemming is a totally normal thing to do in searches, right? Take off the ed from the verb or the ing and just match the stem of the word. You can't do that with normal Lucene, what we're on right now. You can do that with Elasticsearch.
And that kind of problem, I think, causes a lot of the places where we hear a lot of search frustration, which is combined with a little bit of sort of the, what experienced users expect from new users. So you have people who took the time to learn they're supposed to look for dupes, did a search, produced not great results, right? Because it's not stemming the word, or they didn't know quite what string to search for. They didn't find it. They post it, and there's 16 people who've seen all the questions, kind of pointing out this. You got to look for these. It's here. It's not nasty, but there's a little sense of like you should have found it probably. And part of it is the search makes it hard right now.
Yeah,
even when you're trying, which people don't always. Search
is super hard. But, what'd be nice is to hire like 10 PhDs or something to go in a room and make an amazing search engine that was just like amazing.
You know what we could do if we did that? We could give it away for free, so let people use it, start to like it,
and charge for
it. And then if
ads.
a lot of people, that'll never work.
Yeah,
and we're gonna see.
It might lead to cars driving.
I have high hopes for
YouTube comments and
for this Elasticsearch solution, because it's we're basically on a search engine, Lucene.net, that hasn't really been developed for years.
Yeah. Elasticsearch also...
and it wasn't even a complete solution even when it was being developed, because everybody recognized that and built things on top of it, right? The Solar and then now Elasticsearch. Fog Creek's actually using Elasticsearch, we talked to.
They're switching to.
Kevin downstairs, they use it for Kiln.
Yeah, and they will use it for Fog.
They're very happy with it. They said they had queries that were timing out at 30 seconds that suddenly took like 4 milliseconds.
Ooh, interesting. But it's built on top of...
So what is it? Lucene is like the raw engine underneath that you're really not supposed to use directly. It just gives you like the basic index. It's like, it's like, I don't even know. It's like SQL Server without all the magic that SQL Server adds on top of everything. It's like if you just had tables and columns. And so everyone just there's all these packages that are just built on top of it to do all the things you would expect search to do. And we didn't have access to any of that because we were stuck in Lucene.net.
Yeah. And why were we using Lucene? Who knows? It's just we started using a long time ago.
Lucene is fine. We're using Lucene.net because it's like literally the only .net option.
Yeah, right. It is good.
It's good if you just need to drop something. It's great for the programmer. You just drop it in and you throw your data at it and you get search. And now you have a search box. And it's good enough for a long time.
Easy. Yeah.
But the problem is Google makes, just makes everybody look bad because they
will
always be better.
Google. That's true. Yeah. They don't even have like as much information as we do about metadata that we could use to make our searches smarter and better and
but they do have a bunch of metadata that we don't have, which is
outside links.
We
could gather that.
Search clicks and so
store
on.
refers. All we got to do is every time we get a refer into a thing, we just stash it away in our search engine.
Yes, we could make that a part of it.
That would be a cheesy and cheap way to.
They're doing a lot of magic that we would have to reinvent.
But the refers are mostly there to say it.
But they're not just looking at they're not just looking at they're doing page rank. They're looking at what the text was in the link that you clicked, which we can't get. Right? They're not just looking at where it came from. They're looking at what you clicked.
All that stuff.
No, we can't. Well, we could crawl a web and gather it, but
we could have an Xcode plugin that basically takes a screenshot of all the code that you were writing when you asked a question on Stack Overflow and uses that to make our search engine better.
Yeah, that's a great
Wouldn't that be cool?
idea. Yeah. So if you're interested in working on that, we're hiring.
We are actually hiring.
So we need developers.
8. We need 8 more developers, and we're hiring in New York, London, Denver, and all over the world. So you can just about be anywhere.
Yeah. So we're hiring remote.
Not North Korea.
This is an interesting thing. It's just we were a little worried about doing remote when we started. Well,
on careers.
Jeff wasn't for the careers team, but it's just becoming more and more. It's just the future. I don't know. It's the future of how development is going to be done, I think.
The one thing I will say is that the whole team It really helps if the whole team is remote. In other words,
Yeah, hybrid is bad.
a hybrid doesn't work so well. Yeah.
It's not the whole team. It's that it has to be enough that sort of the
All
locus
conversations are online.
of decision making is online, not in the office.
Right.
If the locus of decision making is in the office, then the people who are remote are never going to know everything they need to know.
Yeah, and they're just going to get further and further behind. Yeah. Although they did get their holiday bonuses and presents before anybody in the main office. So, not really behind. They're ahead in some ways.
Bags of coal. And
No, it's a motivational book. Who Moved My Cheese? I bought a copy of.
1 million unicorn dollars.
I just listened to a podcast
And a copy
you
of
recorded,
Joel's book.
2 years ago where you referenced Who Moved My Cheese.
Really? But it keeps coming up. That keeps coming up. I still haven't read it. There's a mouse on the cover.
It has 9 pages.
I don't know. That was a pretty good podcast. Number
Anything else we
39.
want to talk? We're not allowed to. Rule number 1 of podcasting.
Don't
What's
talk
that?
about podcasting.
Yeah.
Shit.
Does anybody still listen to podcasts?
No, you're really not allowed to talk about Michael Pryor talking about us not talking about podcasting.
Yeah.
That's
Now
the
he's going to
number
yell at us again.
Okay, I wrote down things to talk about at the end, and all I have here is if you have questions for us, which would be very
We already
helpful. 'cause
talked
we
about that.
obviously don't have any. Please go right now. I know, but everybody wanted to keep listening to the podcast. It's like when you're on YouTube and they're like, if you want to, click this link. And then they have a link right in the middle of the video, and there's still 2 minutes left to run on the video. And if you click it, you don't get to watch the last 2 minutes of the video that you were watching. So why would anybody ever click it? And then by the time you get to the end, you don't have the link because it's the middle of the video. So that's worthless, isn't it?
It literally took me until almost the very end of that story for me to understand what you were even talking about.
So what I'm
It's
talking about
interesting
is,
you followed him so far down that particular path.
did you not pay attention? I'll show you an example later.
I'm sure there'll be a mandatory training session this afternoon.
His point was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the point was
Yeah.
that we mentioned it earlier, but clearly nobody was going to pause this fascinating, riveting podcast to go record their question right then. But if we do it at the end,
Oh, they can pause.
when the podcast is over, then they will, of course, they'll be like, well, I could go back to work.
That's right.
Or I could go ask my question.
Or you can go ask your questions. So if you have a question for us, you go to s.tk/podcast questions, all one word. That's pod as in podcast, cast as in podcast, and then questions like Psychoflow is a question and answer site, except it's pluralized. And it's just all one word. Till then, see you on Cha-Cha.
Cha-cha.
Cha-cha?
Cha-Cha.
Bye.
Wil Wheaton gets frazzled sometimes. Wil Wheaton has an ulcer and a stressful time at work. Wil Wheaton gets bitter sometimes. But Wil Wheaton's not the only one who's acting like a jerk. And while he doesn't like to name names, and he's not trying to assign blame, it's hard to focus on his own game. It doesn't mean Wil Wheaton doesn't love you. Wil Wheaton says,
I don't think Joel was ever really listening to anything that happened in this podcast.
No, not really.
I
I'm
think
on
He's
Twitter.
still looking at that same YouTube video.
We're getting
with the
to
link
a-
watching Nickelodeon.
We're getting to an interesting podcast dynamic here in which Jay and I decide ahead of time what we're going to talk about, and Joel just cracks jokes about whatever we mention. It doesn't have to be about what we mention. It's just
Pretty
something
much all I
something
ever
that he
do.
Is
thought
it just
of.
me or does that sound like a normal work day here?
That's kind of what you hired me for, isn't it?
Oh,
Wait, we
God,
hired
who made,
you?
Who made that decision?